The large circular room fell silent as Ambassador Zixtal approached the speaking platform. His 6 limbs trembled slightly, causing the jeweled medallions on his ceremonial robes to jingle. The 200 representatives of the Galactic Council waited. Some leaned forward in their gravity pods, others extended sensory organs. All wanted to hear about the troubling report from the small blue planet in the unfashionable spiral arm of the galaxy. Esteemed colleagues, Zixtal began, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into the standard galactic language. The humans have done it. They have achieved faster-than-light travel. Murmurs and gasps filled the chamber. Some representatives made signs to ward off bad luck. Others began recording urgent messages to their homeworlds. This was not expected. For at least 2 more centuries, Zixtal continued, our observation teams report they used a method we had not considered. They call it quantum tunneling. It does not just bend space, it punches through it. The oldest member of the council, a being of pure energy contained in an ancient mechanical shell, flashed brightly in alarm. Do they understand what they have done? Have they been warned? Zixtal lowered all 4 of his eyes. They have not. They remain unaware of galactic civilization, unaware of the laws they have broken, unaware of what they may have awakened. Far away on the blue planet called Earth, Dr. Alan Murphy stared at the large machine that filled most of the underground laboratory. The quantum tunneling device was his life's work. After 15 years of research, countless failed tests, and 3 government funding cancellations, today was the day. Today they would make history. Power levels stable at 85%, called out Maria Garcia from her station. The young engineer had been with the project for only 2 years, but her brilliance with energy systems had solved problems Alan's team had struggled with for a decade. Gravitational field is aligned and holding, reported Dr. Samantha Rogers, not looking up from her screens. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, and she hadn't slept in 36 hours. None of them had. They were too close to... Stop now. Lieutenant Chris Boyd checked the security monitors again. Still clear. No sign that Washington has figured out what we're doing. He adjusted his uniform and frowned. But they will. We're pulling enough power to black out half the eastern seaboard. Someone's going to notice. Alan nodded but didn't respond. Chris was right. The military had assigned the lieutenant to the project as a liaison 3 years ago. But Alan knew the real reason. To keep an eye on them. To make sure they didn't do exactly what they were about to do today. They'll thank us after we succeed, Samantha said, finally looking up. Imagine an instant travel across the galaxy. No more generation ships, no more cryosleep. Humanity among the stars within our lifetime. Alan walked around the machine, checking connections one last time. The quantum tunneling device looked like a giant metal donut surrounded by 4 towers. Inside the donut, empty space waited to become a doorway to somewhere else, anywhere else they programmed it to open to. Final checks complete, he announced. Maria, begin the power-up sequence. Maria's fingers danced across her control panel. Lights throughout the lab dimmed as the machine drew more power. The giant donut began to hum. A low vibration shook the floor. Chris, you should call Washington. Now, Alan said quietly. Tell them what we're doing. Chris hesitated, then shook his head. You know what they'll say. They'll order us to shut down. They'll say it's too dangerous, too untested. It is dangerous, Samantha admitted. But we've run every possible simulation. The math works. Maria laughed nervously. What's the worst that could happen? As soon as she spoke those words, Alan felt a chill. Something about the phrase bothered him, like a splinter in his mind. But there was no time for superstition now. Quantum field stabilizing, Samantha called out. Tunnel forming! The air inside the metal donut began to shimmer. Then it darkened as if that piece of space was being pulled away from reality. A perfect circle of absolute darkness formed. It's working, Alan whispered. The instruments showed a stable quantum tunnel forming exactly as their calculations had predicted. They had done it. They had created a doorway through space itself. Then Samantha frowned. Wait, These readings don't make sense. The tunnel is going deeper than we programmed. Power. Surge, Maria shouted. Something's feeding energy back into the system. The darkness within the donut grew. It wasn't just black. It was an absence, as if that portion of reality had been erased. And it was growing. Shut it down, Chris yelled, rushing toward the emergency shutdown. Alan stood frozen, staring at the darkness. For just a moment he thought he saw something looking back, not with eyes but with awareness. Ancient, vast, awakening. Maria hit the shutdown sequence. The machine wailed in protest as emergency systems engaged. The lab plunged into darkness as circuit breakers blew throughout the facility. For 10 terrifying seconds, only the unnatural darkness of the tunnel provided any light, a negative glow that hurt to look at. Then emergency generators kicked in. Red lights bathed the lab. The quantum tunneling device powered down with a series of loud clicks and groans. The darkness within the donut faded, leaving normal empty air. Is everyone okay? Alan called out, finally finding his voice. His team responded, shaken but unhurt. They gathered around Samantha's monitoring station, the only one still functioning. Did we succeed? Maria asked, her earlier confidence gone. Samantha studied the readings. Yes and no. We created a stable tunnel for 8.3 seconds, but something went wrong. The tunnel went elsewhere. Elsewhere? Chris asked. What does that mean? It was supposed to open 1,000 meters above our position. It didn't, Samantha said simply. According to these readings, our tunnel reached much further. Much, much further. Alan felt that chill again. How much further? Samantha looked up, her face pale in the red emergency light. I don't know exactly, but the readings suggest our tunnel may have extended beyond our solar system, possibly beyond our galaxy. Chris swore under his breath. That's impossible. The power requirements would be something provided the extra power. Maria interrupted. The surge came through the tunnel itself. They fell silent, considering the implications. Alan thought again about what he had seen, or sensed, in that moment of darkness. Something ancient, something awakening. Across the vast empty stretches, between galaxies, the Watchers stirred. For millennia they had drifted in semi-hibernation, their consciousness spread thin across the cosmos. Now they gathered, pulled together by the ripple of the humans' experiment. One spoke to the others, its thoughts crossing light years instantly. They have broken the prime seal. Another responded, they do not know what they have done. They never do, said a third. That is the tragedy of young species. They ask what is the worst that could happen without understanding that the universe always answers such questions. The Watchers began to move toward the small blue planet. They had seen this before. They knew what followed when the seals between realities were broken. They knew about the harvest that would come. They also knew they would probably be too late to save humanity. They always were. 3 weeks after the quantum tunneling experiment, Joe Williams stood in the middle of his empty cornfield and tried to make sense of what he was seeing. The corn was gone. All 50 acres of nearly mature stalks had vanished overnight. In their place was something that should not exist. The crystal formation rose from the soil like a frozen explosion. It glowed with soft blue light that seemed to come from within. It changed colors slowly, from blue to purple to a deep red, then back again. Joe had called the police, but they hadn't believed him. Then he called the university. They had sent someone, but the scientist had taken one look at the crystal, made a phone call, and then government vehicles had arrived. Now men in dark suits asked him questions while others set up equipment around the crystal formation. They had told Joe to stay back, but it was his land. He wasn't going anywhere. Mr. Williams, one of the men said, we need you to sign these papers. Joe looked at the document. This says, I can't talk about what happened here. That's correct. This is now a matter of national security. Joe frowned. It's a matter of my livelihood. What happened to my corn? What is that thing? The man didn't answer. Instead, he pointed to the signature line again. Joe signed. He didn't have much choice. 200 miles above Earth, Commander Lisa Wright floated in the observation module of the International Space Station. She had been in space for 5 months now. She knew the stars better than she knew her own apartment back in Houston. So when the stars started moving, she noticed. At first, she thought it was a problem with her eyes. Then she thought it might be space debris reflecting sunlight. But after 3 nights of careful observation, she was certain. Some of the stars were moving. Not the fast streak of satellites or the slow drift of planets. This was different. The stars were forming patterns. Lisa took careful notes and photographs. She sent them to NASA with her daily report. The response was strange. Instead of the usual questions, she received a 1-line reply. Continue observation. New instructions coming. That night, the patterns became clearer. 7 stars that had never been in these positions before formed a perfect ring. In the center of the ring, darkness gathered. Not just the darkness of space, but something deeper. Lisa felt cold just looking at it. Her radio crackled. Commander Wright, this is Houston. We're sending you new coordinates for the telescope. Priority 1. Lisa acknowledged and adjusted the station's external telescope to the provided coordinates. When the image came through on her screen, she gasped. The ring of stars was much larger than she had thought. And in the center of that dark space, something was moving. Back on Earth, Dr. Alan Murphy stood before a hastily assembled committee in a secure underground facility. The panel included military officers, government officials, and scientists from various fields. None of them looked happy. Explain again what happened during your experiment, General Frank Peterson demanded. Alan took a deep breath. We successfully created a quantum tunnel, but it didn't connect to the destination we programmed. Something interfered. You're saying your experiment was hijacked? A woman in a dark suit asked. Not exactly. More like amplified. Our calculations showed the tunnel should have reached 1,000 meters above our facility. Instead, it reached much further. How much further? General Peterson leaned forward. Alan looked at Samantha, who nodded slightly. Based on our readings and subsequent analysis, we believe our tunnel may have reached beyond our solar system, possibly even beyond our galaxy. The room erupted in voices. The general called for order. That's impossible, said an older scientist Alan didn't recognize. The energy requirements would be astronomical. That's what concerns us, Samantha spoke up. The extra energy came through the tunnel itself from the other side. Silence fell over the room. Are you suggesting, the woman in the dark suit said slowly, that something out there noticed your experiment and helped it along? We don't know, Alan admitted. But since that day, there have been anomalies. The crystal formation in Nebraska, the star movements, and the dreams. Everyone in the room shifted uncomfortably. The dreams had started 2 days after the experiment. Reports came in from around the world of people experiencing the same nightmare. They dreamed of vast entities watching Earth with ancient awareness, and they all heard the same phrase. The curious ones have called. We must answer. We need to know what's coming, General Peterson said. Dr. Murphy, we're giving you full resources to study these phenomena. Your team is being expanded. As Alan left the meeting, his phone buzzed. It was a text from Maria. Turn on your TV now. Alan found the nearest television in the facility's break room. Every channel showed the same image. Every screen worldwide displayed the same message in local languages. Your species has broken the prime seal. The Watchers have awakened. Prepare. The next day, people everywhere woke to a changed sky. Enormous vessels hung in Earth's orbit, each the size of a small moon. They made no move to approach or attack. They simply watched. Earth's military forces scrambled jets and activated defense systems, but every weapon system mysteriously powered down when targeting protocols were initiated. The message was clear. Resistance was not an option. In the days that followed, panic gave way to a strange calm. The visitors, now called the Watchers by everyone, made no hostile moves. They simply observed. Some people held up signs welcoming the aliens, others prayed. Most simply waited to see what would happen next. Dr. Samantha Rogers worked with linguists and communication experts to establish contact. After 3 days of broadcasting various greeting messages, the Watchers responded. Their message was sent directly to the screens of the team working to contact them. "We have heard you. We will speak. Prepare a representative." Alan volunteered immediately. "I started this. I should be the one to meet them." Samantha grabbed his arm. "We don't know what they want, Alan. This could be dangerous." "Everything about this is dangerous," he replied. "But someone has to go. It should be me." 2 days later, Alan stood on the roof of the research facility as a small craft descended from one of the Watcher vessels. It was surprisingly simple in design, a smooth silver sphere with no visible openings. As it touched down, a portion of its surface simply vanished, creating a doorway. Alan looked back at his team. Chris gave him a firm nod. Maria smiled nervously. Samantha mouthed, "Be careful." Then Alan stepped into the craft. The opening sealed behind him. Inside was a single empty chamber with no controls, no seating, nothing but smooth walls that glowed with soft light. The journey to the Watcher vessel took less than a minute. Alan felt almost no movement, just a slight pressure change. Then a new opening appeared, and he stepped out into a vast chamber unlike anything he had ever seen. The walls, floor, and ceiling seemed to stretch into infinity. The architecture followed rules that hurt his mind to look at, angles that couldn't exist, structures that seemed both solid and fluid at the same time. And then he saw them. The Watchers. They appeared as reflections of himself, but not quite right. As if someone had described a human to an artist who had never seen one before. They moved with fluid grace, their forms shifting slightly with each movement. "Dr. Alan Murphy," one said, its voice somehow inside his head rather than in the air. "You have questions." Alan steadied himself. "Yes, who are you? What do you want?" "We are the Watchers. We were ancient when your world was young. We have seen species rise and fall across this galaxy and others. We want nothing, we come because we must." "I don't understand." The Watcher moved closer. "Your species asks, what's the worst that could happen without understanding the cosmos answers such challenges? Your quantum breach has attracted attention from what dwells between realities, entities that feed on developing civilizations." Alan felt cold spread through his body. "Are you saying we're in danger, that something is coming?" "We are not the threat," the Watcher said. "We are the warning system. The real danger is what follows in our wake. Ancient predatory entities that we call the Harvest, and they are coming for Earth." Alan returned to Earth with knowledge that weighed heavily on his shoulders. The military transport took him directly from the landing site to the underground command center where his team waited. Samantha, Chris, and Maria sat around a large table with General Peterson and several government officials Alan didn't recognize. "They call themselves the Watchers," Alan began. No one spoke as he described the strange beings and their even stranger vessel. They claim to be one of the first intelligent species in the universe. They evolved billions of years ago and have moved beyond physical form. What we see are just vessels they create to interact with physical beings like us. "Are they a threat?" General Peterson asked. Alan shook his head. "No, they're here to warn us. Our quantum tunneling experiment broke what they call the prime seal, a barrier between realities. The Watchers monitor these barriers. When one breaks, they come to warn the species responsible." "Warn us about what?" Chris asked. Alan took a deep breath. "Something they call the Harvest. Ancient entities that exist between realities. They feed on developing civilizations, and now they're coming for us." The room fell silent. Samantha was the first to speak. "How long do we have?" "Days. Maybe a week." Alan pulled out a small crystal the Watchers had given him. "This contains information about the Harvest, what they are, how they operate, and why the Watchers have never been able to stop them." Maria took the crystal and examined it. How do we access the information? The Watchers said our computers can read it. It adapts to any technology. Within hours, the crystal was connected to their systems. Information poured onto screens around the room. Images of worlds destroyed, species extinct, civilizations wiped from existence. The harvest doesn't just destroy, Samantha said as she studied the data. They consume potential. They're attracted to species at technological turning points, moments when a civilization is about to make great leaps forward. Like inventing quantum tunneling technology, Maria added quietly. The Watchers have tried to fight the harvest. For billions of years, Alan explained. They've failed every time. All they can do now is warn species like us, but there's never been enough time to prepare. How do these harvest things attack? General Peterson asked. The screens showed swirling, darkness-consuming planets, not by physical means, but by somehow unraveling reality itself around them. They distort space-time, Chris observed. They create tears in reality that expand until they swallow everything. Can they be stopped? Someone asked. Alan gestured to more data flowing across the screens. According to the Watchers, no. At least no species has ever succeeded. The Watchers themselves tried for millions of years before giving up. So they just warn people now? That's it? Maria's voice rose in anger. They tell civilizations they're about to die and then watch it happen? They believe it's better than saying nothing, Alan replied. At least species know why they're being destroyed. In the days that followed, more strange phenomena appeared around the world. In Egypt, the Nile River flowed backward for 6 hours. In Japan, people reported seeing their reflections move independently in mirrors and windows. In Brazil, an entire forest turned to glass overnight. The Watcher vessels remained in orbit, silent observers to what was coming. Earth's governments tried to keep the situation under control, but panic spread as the phenomena increased. Religious leaders declared the end times. Scientists worked desperately to understand what was happening. Military forces stood ready, though no one knew what they could possibly fight. On the 7th day after Alan's meeting with the Watchers, it began. Distortions appeared in the sky. Areas where light bent wrongly, where stars disappeared. The distortions started small, just pinpricks in reality, but they grew larger by the hour. Alan and his team watched from their command center as feeds from around the world showed the same phenomenon. The harvest had arrived. We need to try something, Samantha said. Anything. Like what? Chris asked. You heard Alan. No one has ever stopped them. No one like us has ever tried, Maria pointed out. She turned to Alan. The Watchers said, these things feed on potential, right? On civilizations at turning points? Alan nodded. That's why they're drawn to species that make technological breakthroughs. Maria looked around the room. Then maybe that's the key. Every species the Watchers have seen destroyed. What did they have in common? Samantha caught on quickly. They were logical, orderly. Their development followed predictable patterns. Exactly, Maria said. But humans aren't like that. We're messy, chaotic. General Peterson frowned. You're saying our weakness might be our strength? I'm saying the harvest might not know what to do with us, Maria explained. Think about it. Most alien species in the Watchers' records developed technology in a logical sequence. They mastered their planets before reaching for the stars. They united their species before developing dangerous technologies. But we didn't, Alan realized. We split the atom before we solved world hunger. We sent people to the moon while still fighting wars on Earth. We developed quantum tunneling in a secret lab against government orders. Samantha stood up. The Watchers see our unpredictability as dangerous. Maybe to the harvest, it's indigestible. Plan began to form. Not a logical plan, not an orderly plan. A human plan. Within hours, a message went out to every government, every research facility, every creative mind on the planet. Show them humanity. All of it. The good, the bad, the beautiful, the terrible. Show them what makes us human. Scientists. began broadcasting mathematical proofs alongside poetry. Musicians played symphonies while mathematicians solved equations. Artists created while soldiers stood guard. Every radio telescope, every broadcasting station, every computer network began sending humanity's collective output into space, directed at the growing distortions. "Will this work?" General Peterson asked Alan as they watched the effort unfold. "I don't know," Alan admitted. "But it's the most human thing we could do, try the impossible." The distortions continued to grow. In orbit, the Watcher's vessels moved closer to Earth. Alan received a message from them on his personal communicator. "We stand ready to witness, as we have always done." Alan sent back a reply. "Don't just witness. Watch what happens when humanity faces the impossible." Around the world, people continued their work. No one fled, no one surrendered. As the distortions reached the edge of Earth's atmosphere, humanity shouted into the void with every voice, every idea, every creation they had ever made. And for the first time in billions of years of watching civilizations fall, the Watchers observed something new. The distortions slowed. The distortions slowed but did not stop. They hung in the sky like dark wounds in reality. The harvest paused at the edge of Earth's atmosphere, neither advancing nor retreating. For 3 days, this strange standoff continued. In the command center, Alan and his team worked without rest. They coordinated the global broadcast of humanity's output, everything from ancient cave paintings to modern quantum physics, from children's lullabies to military marches. "It's working," Maria said, her voice hoarse from lack of sleep. "But it's not enough." Samantha studied the latest readings. "The distortions are changing. See these patterns? They're starting to match our broadcast frequencies." Chris looked up from his station. "Are they learning from us? Or trying to?" Alan said. "The Watchers never mentioned anything like this happening before." General Peterson entered the room with 2 government officials. "We just received a message from the Watchers. They want to speak with you, Dr. Murphy, all of you." This time the Watchers sent a larger vessel. Alan, Samantha, Maria, and Chris boarded together. The inside was different from what Alan had seen before. The impossible geometry was still there, but now images from Earth floated in the air. Paintings, equations, music made visible as patterns of light. 5 Watcher forms appeared, each one resembling a slightly wrong version of a human. "You have confused the harvest," one said, its voice in their minds rather than their ears. "Is that good?" Samantha asked. "It is unprecedented," another Watcher replied. "In billions of years we have never seen the harvest hesitate." Alan stepped forward. "Will they leave?" "No," the first Watcher said. "They are drawn to your potential, but they cannot consume what they cannot understand." Maria gestured to the floating images. "You've been studying what we've been broadcasting." "Yes. Your species is contradictory. You create beauty while causing destruction. You seek knowledge while clinging to ignorance. You are unified in your diversity." Chris frowned. "What does that mean for us?" "It means you have bought time," a third Watcher said. "But the harvest will adapt. They always do. Then we need to surprise them again," Alan said. "If they're confused by our contradictions, let's show them more." The Watchers conferred among themselves, a silent exchange that the humans could sense but not understand. Finally, one spoke again. "We will help you. For the first time, we will." Do more than watch. When they returned to Earth, Alan's team had a new plan, not just to broadcast humanity's past creations, but to create something entirely new, a combined effort that would showcase the full spectrum of human potential. Scientists from every field gathered. Artists, musicians, writers joined them. Military strategists sat beside philosophers. World leaders worked alongside ordinary citizens. Together they created what they called the human response. It began with mathematics, pure, elegant equations that described the universe in numbers. Then came art that transformed those equations into visual beauty. Music followed, turning the visual into sound. Poetry gave the sound meaning. And around all of this, the practical human ingenuity that turned abstract concepts into reality. All of it was broadcast directly at the harvest distortions. And this time, the watchers added their own technology, amplifying the broadcast beyond anything humans could achieve alone. The effect was immediate. The distortions shimmered and changed color. Where before they had been voids of absolute darkness, now they rippled with faint hues of blue and purple. "They're responding," Samantha said, watching the readings from sensors worldwide. "The patterns are changing faster now." In orbit, Commander Lisa Wright reported unusual activity around the Watcher vessels. "They're releasing smaller craft. Hundreds of them. They're forming a barrier between Earth and the distortions." For the first time in their ancient history, the Watchers were taking direct action. Their vessels formed a protective shield around Earth while amplifying humanity's broadcast. But the harvest began to adapt. The distortions pulsed and grew despite the barrier. Dark tendrils reached through gaps between the Watcher vessels. "They're breaking through," Chris reported as alarms sounded throughout the command center. Alan made a decision. "We need to go further. Not just show them what humanity is, show them what humanity could be." He turned to the team of scientists and artists who had created the human response. "We need to create something new. Not just a reflection of what we are, but a vision of what we might become." They worked frantically as the harvest pressed closer. Musicians composed songs about futures that had not yet happened. Artists painted worlds that did not exist. Scientists developed theories that pushed beyond current understanding. Writers created stories of a humanity that had overcome its own darkness to reach the stars. All of this was added to the broadcast. Not just human achievement, but human potential. The very thing the harvest fed upon, but transformed into something they had never encountered before. The distortions reached the upper atmosphere. The ground shook as reality itself strained under the pressure. The Watcher vessels fought to maintain their barrier, but several were overcome by the darkness and vanished. "It's not working fast enough," Maria said, her voice tight with fear. Alan looked at the data flowing across their screens. "We need to do something they'll never expect. Something no logical species would ever try." Samantha looked up. "What's more unexpected than making first contact with the thing trying to destroy you?" It was a desperate idea. Insane even, but it was also very human. Working with the Watchers, they modified the broadcast. Instead of simply projecting humanity outward, they created a channel, an invitation for communication. "You're asking the harvest to talk to us?" General Peterson asked in disbelief. "Yes," Alan said simply. "No species has ever tried to understand them. They consume, others are consumed. That's been the pattern for billions of years." "And what if they don't want to talk?" Chris asked. Alan had no answer for that. The modified broadcast went out. For long minutes, nothing changed. The distortions continued their advance. More Watcher vessels disappeared into the darkness. Then a response came. Not in words or images, but in a shifting of the distortions themselves. They formed patterns that mimicked human brainwaves. "They're trying to communicate," Samantha whispered. Working with the Watcher's technology, they translated the patterns. The message was simple but profound. What are you? The question of a predator trying to understand its prey? Or something more? Alan sent back humanity's answer. We are what comes after you. We are what grows from destruction. We are what learns from the past but is not bound by it. We are human. The distortions paused again. Then slowly they began to change. The darkness lightened. The void filled with swirling colors. The harvest was transforming before their eyes. A new message formed. Show us. And humanity did. They showed the harvest everything, their hopes, their fears, their dreams, their nightmares. They held nothing back. It was the most human thing they could do. Face the darkness with complete honesty, hiding nothing of themselves. For 7 days, the harvest entities surrounded Earth, Their once dark, void-like forms now shimmered with color and light. They no longer tried to consume. Instead, they observed and learned. In the command center, Alan and his team worked to understand what was happening. The readings made no sense according to any known science. The harvest entities were changing at the quantum level. "They're becoming something else," Samantha said, studying the data. "Their energy signatures are completely different now." Maria looked up from her station. "The Watchers are sending us a message." On the main screen, symbols appeared, quickly translated by their systems. "This has never happened before. The harvest is transforming. You have done what we thought impossible." General Peterson entered the room, his face showing rare amazement. "You need to see this. All of you." They followed him to a larger room where screens showed feeds from around the world. The harvest entities were creating something. In the skies above major cities, they rearranged matter and energy into vast, impossible structures. Beautiful patterns formed from manipulated starlight. Nebulae shifted into artwork visible from Earth's surface. "They're appreciating us," Samantha whispered. "They're creating art." The Watcher vessel in orbit sent new information. The harvest had never encountered a species like humans before. Every other civilization they had consumed followed logical patterns of development. Their potential was predictable, easy to absorb. But humans were different. Their potential came from their contradictions, their messiness, their ability to create beauty from chaos. The harvest couldn't consume what they couldn't understand. Alan explained to world leaders in an emergency meeting, and when they tried to understand us, they changed. "What happens now?" asked the President of the United States. "We don't know," Alan admitted. "This is new territory for everyone, including the Watchers." On the 8th day, something remarkable happened. The barriers between dimensions began to heal. The quantum breach that had started everything was closing, but not through the Watchers' ancient technologies. Somehow, the harvest entities were repairing what had been broken. Commander Lisa Wright, still aboard the International Space Station, was the first to see it, a tear-like shimmer falling across the face of Jupiter. Light bent in ways that defied physics, creating what looked like a liquid streak across the gas giant. "It looks like it's weeping," she reported. "Jupiter is weeping." Similar phenomena appeared across the solar system, then beyond. Stars seemed to shed liquid light. Planets glowed with new colors. The fabric of space itself rippled like water disturbed by a stone. "The universe is weeping," Alan realized as he watched the feeds. Not in sorrow, but in transformation. The Watchers sent a final message before their vessels began to depart. "In billions of years, we have witnessed the harvest consume countless developing civilizations. Never have we seen them transformed by what they encountered. Your species asked, 'What's the worst that could happen?' And in doing so, changed the nature of the worst itself." As the Watchers departed, a new message came, not from them, but from the harvest entities. It was not in words, but in images and emotions that somehow everyone on Earth could understand. They showed gratitude. They showed appreciation. They showed a new purpose. The harvest had been consumers of potential. Now they would be caretakers of it. They would preserve and protect the unique spark they had found in humanity. 3 months later, Alan stood on the platform in Stockholm, accepting the Nobel Prize on behalf of his team. The world had changed. Knowledge shared by both the Watchers and the transformed harvest entities had advanced human science by centuries in mere months. "We stand at a new beginning," Alan said in his acceptance speech. "Not just for humanity, but for the universe itself. We have learned that our greatest strength was never our technology or our intelligence. It was our contradictions, our messiness, our humanity." After the ceremony, Alan found Samantha, Chris, and Maria waiting for him. "How does it feel to save the world?" Chris asked with a smile. Alan shook his head. "We didn't save it, we changed it. That's what humans do." Maria pointed to a news alert on her phone. Another signal had been detected from deep space. Not from the Watchers or the harvest, but from someone new. More species were reaching out, curious about the civilization that had done the impossible. "The Galactic Council wants us to join them," Samantha said. "Not as junior partners, but as teachers." "Teachers?" Alan asked, surprised. The Watchers shared what happened here with other advanced civilizations. "They want to learn from us, from humans." The quantum tunneling technology that had started everything was now being developed safely, with guidance from the Watchers. Soon humanity would take its first official steps into the wider universe. That evening, Alan stood alone on the hotel balcony, looking up at the stars. They seemed different now, more alive. The universe itself had changed because humans had done what they always did: faced the impossible with creativity, courage, and a touch of recklessness. Samantha joined him, handing him a glass of champagne. "What are you thinking about?" "Maria's question," he replied. "The one that started all this. What's the worst that could happen?" Samantha smiled. "Yes. Turns out the worst that could happen was that we changed the universe forever, just by being ourselves." As they watched, a star in the distance seemed to shimmer, sending a streak of light across the sky. The universe was still weeping, still transforming, still becoming something new because of what humanity had shown it. In the vast chambers of the Galactic Council, Ambassador Zixtal presented his final report on the humans. The 200 representatives listened in stunned silence. "The species we once feared has taught us all something valuable," he concluded. They asked, "What's the worst that could happen?" Not out of arrogance, but out of curiosity. And in answering that question, they reminded us all of something we had forgotten: that the universe is not fixed. It changes. It grows. It learns. The oldest member of the council, the being of pure energy in its ancient mechanical shell, flashed brightly. "Then we too must learn. We must change. The humans have shown us that even the oldest truths can be questioned." As the council adjourned, they passed a unanimous resolution. Earth would be designated not as a protected world or a quarantined danger, but as a center of learning. The humans would be invited to share their unique perspective with all species, and, at the very edge of known space, the entities once known as the Harvest continued their new purpose. They created and preserved rather than consumed. They carried the spark of humanity's contradictory nature to places even the Watchers had never reached. The universe continued to weep, but it wept with joy.